My visual aid speech is on women's basketball. 18.9 million viewers, with it peaking at 24 million viewers. That is how many people tuned in to watch the women's Iowa versus South Carolina March Madness final in 2024. This would be recorded the most viewed women's basketball game since 1992, which is over 30 years, and the most watched basketball games, men's and women's, since 2019. The first recorded women's basketball game wasn't until 1892. Let's look at some of the reasons why women weren't allowed to play. So here's some of the reasons that I'll get into, but as you can see in here, this is what women used to have to wear when they play basketball. And then here's current day. This is Malaysia Fuwai plays for South Carolina, and that's the uniforms now. So you can see how that has progressed and changed over time. First, in the late 1800s, women were expected to dress modestly. This meant that they wore corsets, long skirts, long sleeves, and high collars. Playing sports with these clothes on, especially in public, was seen as very inappropriate. As you can see in these photos that I showed you, women are dressed very modest and very differently from the uniforms that are worn today. Second, the gender norms were much different. Because basketball is a contact sport and involves a lot of physical activity, it was seen as not ladylike. It also was rumored that if women played sports, it would harm their reproductive system and their overall health. Lastly, there was lack of facilities that allowed women to play sports and almost no coaching staff nor equipment. So when did this all start to change? Let's look at a graph explaining a little more of the history of women's basketball. Here is some dates with all of the events that occurred for women's basketball and new things that were allowed in order. The first women's college basketball game was held in 1892. This game was held at Smith's College by Sens Bernison, a physical education instructor. She created a modified version of the game to make it more appropriate for women. This included dividing the court into sections to limit the amount of movement and to fit the social expectations of that era. At this time, women were discouraged from playing the sport. There were 9 players on a team, with 4 on each side of the floor and then 1 center that would stand in the middle of the floor. You were not allowed to cross your half of the court and could use the player in the center to get the ball to the other side. Next, in 1953, which is over 50 years after the first women's game was played, the first national team was invented. This was held in Chile, and the U.S. team won gold. Moving on to 1970 and 1972. These are big years for women's basketball. First, women were allowed to play on a full court with only 5 people on each team on the court at a time. This was a big change from 9 players, then to 6 players, and now they were allowed to play with 5 in the full court. Another big thing that took place was Title IX. This was passed and basically stated that whatever amount of money or school that a program spent on the men's side, they also need to spend the exact same amount on the women's side. It also stated that if a school had 6 boys sports teams, they needed to have 6 girls sports team as well. And this just helped with equality with men versus women. Lastly, in 1982, the first Women's March Madness tournament was held. There were a total of 32 teams allowed in the tournament. It was won by Louisiana Tech. Then, the most recent change was in 2022, when the Women's March Madness bracket was allowed to have the full 64 teams that the men's bracket had always had. As you can see, over the last 140 years, women's basketball has developed and improved so much to reciprocate the side of the men's sport. Next, we'll talk about some players that are notable and have made history in this sport. Starting off right here, you can see that is Sue Bird. She's a point guard that played college basketball at the University of Connecticut, UConn. She won 2 national championships in 2000 and 2002. She was drafted the #1 overall pick by the Seattle Storm in 2002 and won 4 WNBA championships in 2004, 2010, 2018, and 2020. She's a 5-time Olympic gold medalist and a 13-time WNBA All-Star. Sue Bird will be inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame on June 14, 2025. As you can see, she is an extremely talented and respected basketball player with a lot of outstanding accomplishments. The next notable player is the one in the center, that's Diana Taurasi. She played at the University of Connecticut UConn also, and won 3 national championships in 2002, 2003, and 2004. She was the #1 overall pick in 2004 by the Phoenix Mercury and is a 3-time WNBA champion. She became the WNBA's all-time leading scorer in 2017. Diana Taurasi is a very confident player and has proven time and time again that women are capable of playing this sport and be good at it. Quoted from Kobe Bryant as he stated, "She's the white mamba. She's the fiercest player I have ever seen." This shows again that other people are starting to realize this is not just a men's sport and people are actually becoming interested in watching the women's side too. The last player right here, that's Lisa Leslie. Lisa Leslie has had a tremendous impact on women's basketball. She played her entire professional career for the Los Angeles Sparks, 1997 to 2009. She became the first female ever to dunk in a WNBA game, and she has won back-to-back WNBA championships and was a 3-time league MVP. She also won 4 gold medals at the Olympics. In conclusion, women's basketball has come a long way from having restricted playing to record-breaking viewership. Icons such as Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, and Lisa Leslie have helped prove that women belong in this sport just as much as men. And here's my works cited. Thank you for listening.